Good morning, everyone. Thank you for turning up on a Saturday. And this is Breaking Barriers. This is our fifth edition in Mumbai. And it is lovely to see many familiar faces who've attended us last time and um, are here today. So let's start. And I believe that we are a bunch of backbenchers. Is that so? Because we have the front row completely empty. So if I can get some volunteers to come into the front, that'll be amazing. I can give you some gifts also, like like incentives. Very tempting. The view is, yeah. The bench. I don't. No, I don't think they'll be movable. Acha, oh, this is kind of like the Blue Man concert. So we will have more people joining us. So make sure that they get space to enter and things like that. Since it's a Saturday and Friday night happened yesterday, so I sympathize. So Breaking Barriers is brought to you by Women's Web. Women's Web is a digital media company. Um, and we are in the business of enabling women to tell stories. We have women who write on the platform, who contribute to the platform, who are part of our community. And uh, Breaking Barriers is one of our flagship events, like I said, and this is one event that leaves us inspired and leaves our community inspired as well. So we had our event in Bangalore and it was amazing, and I would like require and I know for a fact that today would be amazing too. So today's event is Marketing Mantras in a Connected World. Why marketing is because we all know marketing, or we think we know marketing, and marketing is I mean, it evolves at such a speed. And also we believe that probably as women we have years of conditioning which requires us to be humble. So that is a barrier that uh, needs to be broken, and that's what we are here to do. So we have the agenda in the attendee kit, so you can have a look at that. We also have a bookmark from Women's Web, so use it wisely, read good books. So with that, I will go on to the first session of today. We have Vidya with us, Vidya Shankar Narayan, who's the co-founder and partner at Hyperlocal Design Thinking. And prior to this, she helped start up 3 ambitious network ventures in India. And she has worn multiple hats throughout her career, which includes insight specialist, brand consultant, advertising planner, new media strategist, and radio jockey with Air FM Chennai. Can we have Vidya's system connected? Thank you. So Vidya is going to take you through design thinking. Why should it matter to you? And that's the session. So today we are here at RISE Mumbai. And RISE brings together the world's best and brightest startups and experts to create the future of financial services. RISE is a community of brightest thinkers and doers, from rising startups to industry leaders. So today we are at RISE Mumbai. They have chapters of RISE in multiple cities across other countries as well. So yeah. And today's hashtag is breaking barriers. So do take pictures, tweet us, and we'll be retweeting them as well. We'll be tweeting some pictures as well. So let's keep it happening. So over to Vidya.
I need this? Yeah? Okay. I just super. Okay. Hi, everyone. So, I'm going to be talking to you about what's considered to be sometimes an esoteric topic, right? How many of you have heard about design thinking? Design thinking? Yeah? Have you ever had the chance to use it and work with it? Yeah? No? Okay, I'm going to bet that all of you have. I'm going to bet that all of you have used design thinking because it's what we do as human beings. And I would be pushing the thought that it's what we do as women. Yeah? Okay, cool. So let's start with the industry definition. So design thinking was a process developed by two business consultants. Actually, in the late 90s was when they started talking about it a lot. And then they tied up with the Stanford Design School. They launched a rather famous company today called IDEO, which you guys might have heard about. They do a lot of work, developmental work around the world. And design thinking, their idea of design thinking, they said, is about doing three things. Yeah? Empathize, work together, fail effectively. And they said that these are three tasks that feel unintuitive and even countercultural in the world of business. Don't they? We all work. We all perhaps even run our own companies, and especially the last one sounds a bit unmotivating and frightening. So, when my colleagues and I, my partners and I started looking at design thinking and really developing a model for ourselves, we said that, for something called the human-centered design process, these three things are not very human. It's not a very human articulation, isn't it? So, we thought, what's our view of design thinking? And here's how I like to think of design thinking. I like to think of design thinking as my mother's original way. And the picture you see behind is the same, is the recipe that you have with you. Um, my mother's dabbas. I'm a really lucky girl. I've been brought up by a mother who cooks like a goddess. And now I'm married to a chef who cooks like a god. So I'm sorted. I mean, I only need to worry about my weight primarily, but I don't because the food's too good. But when I look at my mother's dabbas, and she still sends me dabbas, yeah, I'm a very spoiled girl, as Aditi knows very well. So when I look at my mother's dabbas over the years, my mother had two very clear things to do. She needed to feed me something healthy, and I was a problem eater, yeah, and she needed to make it tasty and fun for me. Yeah. And if you look at her dabbas over the years, you will be able to see what was healthy at that time, what was considered healthy. I remember eggs being a key feature of it, then soya nuggets being a key feature of it. And then, now it's things like my mother's gone vegan completely, and she could teach people veganism at the moment because she's also like a fairly self-educated nutritionist, etc. So my mother's strategy was very simple in terms of design thinking Vidya's dabbas through the years. Instead of empathize, which is quite a complicated word I think none of us use in daily language, she said, no, Vidya better than she knows herself. That is empathy. Empathy is when you can feel something that the other person's feeling, sometimes at a greater intensity than what they feel, right? The second thing when it comes to my mother is that she was always bonded. It was never work. It wasn't about working together. The whole point was the bond. She could intuit, she was so connected to me and my life that she could intuit what are my challenges, what are the things that I'm into. So sometimes I was getting sandwiches, sometimes I was getting salad, sometimes I was getting rolls. She always knew what I wanted to eat better than I knew what I wanted to eat, and it's because she was bonded. And the reason why through the years, till date, she's sending me dabbas, even when my husband is like a highly acclaimed chef, is because she stayed evolutionary. My husband actually learns from her in terms of formulating the recipes that he cooks up in his kitchen, because the premise of his kitchen is home food that has been contemporized. So when you look at it in a rather simple way of how a mother deals with bringing up her child and resolving notions of health, notions of taste, tempting the kid into eating it, they're natural design thinkers. And we like to think of design thinking in the truly human way, the way people think of it. Know each other better than anybody else, be bonded so that you're always doing the right things, and stay evolutionary so that you're growing together. Yeah? So, why is it a marketing mantra of our times? Who's this is an image I've not been able to get out of my head. And at Hyperlocal, we've taken it on as a challenge to use it in every public speech that we make for the next 1 year. Because somewhere this image really inspires us. This man has come out of nowhere. One of the biggest conversations we have when we speak with some of the clients we work with, such as the Unilevers, P&Gs, Coca-Cola, the FMG giants of the world, right? They're all wondering, ye kahan se aaya? And literally, he came like this, right? And then, as my friend Akshay put it, forgive my French, he took all the 6 Ps and peed on them. That's what he did. He doesn't do anything the way a corporate does. And you will find increasingly there are more and more examples of, I mean, he's an extreme case. Uber has worked like that in India. Zero marketing, they're focused on product, right? All of the new age brands that we know of, Google, all of the digital brands, they're growing in a strange new way, in a rather uncontrollable way. Push versus pull, that nice orderly world where we can push and we can pull. I mean, that doesn't work here, right? This is a whole new kind of world that we are dealing with, where brands and movements are coming out of nowhere and they're getting propelled by people. And they're not getting pushed and pulled in such an orderly, organized way by companies anymore. That's really true of the digital era that we live in. And it's always been true of what are called emerging markets. Yeah, because your competition was always the street, and it was a lot more nimble and inventive than you could be as a huge organization, right? So somewhere design thinking is becoming a mantra of our times, because brands, businesses, and movements today, we believe, they live in a hyper-local world. They're actually propelled by insiders and by people rather than by manufacturers and the companies that are making them. And here is some of the language that we use so often, right? When we talk about consumers. We call them icons, we call them fans, we call them volunteers. You know that guy, right? I think one of the biggest reasons why Sachin is so focused on him is because he's a huge part of building the Sachin myth. It's even bigger than the brand, because every god needs a bhakt, you see. He's the ultimate bhakt. There's a reason, right? So all of these roles, if you look at, they are so much more radically empowered and empowering versus the roles that we typically kind of stereotype people into. What are these roles? We typically call them consumers or end users. And when we look at them in this transactional fashion, like they have no other relationship with us, I feel that in today's day and time, we make a mistake. And we do ourselves an injustice, and we don't leverage the power of the relationship truly that we have with these people today. So for example, cheerful Indian woman shopping in a mall was the search, and that's how just saying consumer feels. You're flattening that relationship, the really rich relationship evolving today into a very flat transactional one. And we are doing ourselves the biggest disservice in doing that, because people evolve, life evolves, right? So finally, why should design thinking matter to women, especially to working women? I would push the thought that we tend to intuitively and culturally work in organic ways, actually, and not systemic ways. Do you know that the employment to education ratio of women in urban India, women like us, not necessarily like us, actually, perhaps more lower middle class, it's actually falling over the last 3 years, while the desire to work is rising, because women don't fit corporate culture. Women actually sometimes have better priorities. They have a different notion of work-life balance, you see? Yeah, so I think there is a lot that women could actually bring if we are conscious of the fact that we do this. I think there's a lot we can bring to the brands and businesses that we are building today. And Actually, what I'm going to do is over the next few slides, I'm just going to demonstrate to you that these are things that you do intuitively. They're things that all of us do, and we need to be conscious of them and start using them for the kind of work that we do. Yeah? So how do we do design thinking? There are many models out there. We're not married to models. But the way we look at this particular model is that it's an organic model, it's a fluid model, and I'll talk you through it. The top part, the top three are insider curation, in situ engagements, foraging expeditions. These are three principles that we practice for defining the problem. Yeah? Then artifacts and archives, blueprints and doodles, identity and assets. These are three principles we use to design the resolution or the solution. Let me talk you through each of these. Yeah? So insider curation, the task is quite a straightforward one. It's the first thing you think of the minute you have an opportunity or a problem at hand. As human beings, the first thing you think of is who can help me solve it, right? And there's no disadvantage in applying that simple logic to the work we do as well. We look for four insider qualities. Yeah, we look for empathy because I think actually in research, one of the mistakes we make is going on saying we should not be biased. Finding the right bias is the job of qualitative research. You have to find the right bias. And curating insiders with the right bias is what gives you the right lens into your problem, right? Intuition, because you want to feel the pulse of what's happening right now. Provocation, because a lot of time when we do what we do, we are caught up in the baggage of, we're looking at it in a blinkered way. And experience, of course, because one of the things we really need to do with design thinking is keep it real. It can't be something you're trying to force fit into someone's life. It needs to come from their lives, right? And here is an example. So for each of these, I'm going to be giving you an example. And the example that I'm going to be giving you is not of some research, but actually of businesses that are built on these principles. The entire business is built on them. That's the first one, right? What are we doing here today? What we are doing here today and what Women's Web is an ecosystem of women empowering women. It's a beautiful insider curation of women right here, right? There's an entire premise built out of this. There's great richness shared. There are great skills shared. We enrich each other. Yeah. So this is the first example of why insider curation actually works as a principle, works as a business, and it's something that you intuitively do actually even when you're setting up your business or just running the projects that you're working on. Yeah. The second thing we do is in situ engagement. So you have a problem or opportunity, but are you really fully aware of the scenario? Are you fully aware of what's happening there? Maybe it's to do with a young person, maybe it's some young kid, maybe it's to do with somebody whose life or problems you can't relate to. So getting in situ to get the insider story is critical, and where and when can you slip into these insider shoes is critical. Sometimes the flaw is if you're there in research, right? So for example, we often do things like WhatsApp diaries. A great way of doing research is to not be there sometimes. Self-ethnography might be a way to explore. So we apply three filters to really think through this. You know, what's the space, what's the timing, what's the company? We don't just throw people together in focus group discussions and stuff. It's counterintuitive actually to the way human beings operate, right? Here is an example of this. It's actually a client that we are working with. Swasti Microfinance is one of Bombay's top microfinance companies. They work with urban lending only to the urban poor. And their entire product is field banking, all of microfinances. But in Swasti's case, they have actually developed the entire microfinance process ground up, bottom up. They've coded the entire thing basis how they studied these people and what their lives are like. It's a truly unique product. So when you really get in, you can make absolutely customizable products and products that succeed where systems don't. No bank can bank these people. The only way you can financially include them is by creating a system that comes from them, right? Um, Here's our third principle, foraging expeditions, something that we love to do. In my long career, I've done a lot of desk research in my life and wondered whether I'm the smartest person to be doing it, you know. And we started thinking more and more like that. In fact, over the last few years, I started thinking more and more like that over the last few years in research. When I started thinking that perhaps the best person to do a piece of desk research for beauty is a beauty blogger and not me, as long as I brief her right? So that's a central premise we apply in foraging, that there are people who are better at finding clues than you are, know who they are and latch onto them. And we do it in three ways. Live is actually going out with them. It's like foraging for truffles, yeah? And to really curate these experiences with these insiders before, so that you're taking a very efficient journey through this environment. WhatsApp diaries, we already spoke about. Virtual foraging is another thing we do. Think of think streams that they're curating with secondary research. An example for this, I would request should come from you. So, last hot insider tip you guys got that you applied for your business? I'll tell you mine if you tell me yours. Any volunteers? Any hot insider tip? Come on, we apply them all the time. No? Exactly. There you go. Here's another business built on it. Airbnb is a business built on hot insider tips quite frequently, right? The insider tip that I got was about 6 months ago from a very dear client who said, Vidya, you know, design thinking seems like it's getting to be really relevant these days. Why don't you think about that? It was a very casual statement, but it really got me thinking, and it actually seemed to consolidate everything that I'd been working towards in my career. It seemed to bring it all together, and I really appreciated that tip. And that's what has gotten me to this point that I'm speaking to you guys. I think all of us know that this happens, right? We get a tip and we use it intelligently. You can do it consciously too as a process in design thinking. Now we are getting into the actual designing part of it. One of the things that we truly believe in is not writing huge dumps of text in our report. Of course, there's a report, right? Of course, you need to document things. But truly, when you are working with a problem, there is no substitute for bringing real materials into it. So one of the things that design thinking works with a lot is to, through your journey, keep capturing materials that capture sensorials that you can't talk about, yeah? Design thinking also does a lot of visual ethnography, so documenting it so that you don't again need to describe it, because there's a lot of loss in translation. Yeah. And benchmarking is a big thing that we do, because you always need to be aware of where are expectations and who's disrupting them. Yeah. A case in point is the giant force that Indian women food bloggers are on the Indian internet today. They're a massive force. And I think more than even being a massive force by themselves, they're doing us a giant favor as a culture. You know, this is the first time that our cultural heritage is being documented. We're an oral culture. I live in fear of not being able to feed someday when I have a child my traditional food. So I don't know how to cook it. You know, I wasn't brought up the way in the same lifestyle that my mother was. So these people, and this lady has actually turned it into a business for herself. I use her recipes a lot. She's fantastic. Blueprints and doodles. One of the problems that organizations struggle a lot with is ideation. And I think one of the reasons we struggle a lot with ideation is typically in an ideation room, there'll be somebody from marketing, somebody from sales, somebody from labs, somebody from, all speaking different languages. All of the languages are called jargon, right? So we don't talk. When we ideate, we do things. We get our hands dirty and we scribble, we use collages, we use mock-ups, we use 3D shapes more often than not. We give plasticine, because the more you get to doing things and getting your hands dirty rather than talking about it, the more you actually are in the idea space, and the more you are working together and not getting locked into each other's jargon. Yeah. So we start with scribbles, collages, mock-ups, and then we really develop this into very rich and detailed multimedia debriefs, sensorial boards, mood films, and we do it with people, with all the insiders that we are working in, because that's what makes it truly rich. Yeah. Um, I didn't mean for you to do this now, but perhaps in the interest of time, I'll just make the point that at some point, if you found anything valuable in this talk, or indeed today, I would suggest you draw it. It's a visual memory trick. Yeah, when you draw something, it becomes real, you don't forget it. And it's a great way of sharing a thought in the simplest way possible. You could share it with your child if you draw it. And that is beautiful thinking. Yeah, if it needs to be coded into jargon and like normal human beings can't understand, probably not very good. As an idea that needs to work in the real world. Last one, identity and assets. I want to craft the idea for you to own. We are big believers in this. When we are crafting an idea with a company, we are not crafting it for any of the clients that we are working with. We are crafting it for the people who they are dealing with, right? So that's a key flip. It's not about the company owning that idea, it's about the people, the insiders owning that idea. And how do you create an idea like that, that people want to own and promote and run with and evolve and develop? There are brands like this in our world today, we all know, right? So we keep in mind 4 insider ingredients, symbols that feel very, very native. Yeah, and there's a lot of uh, 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 cultural kind of insight that goes into using symbols intelligently. You know how this is supposed to be a high five, right? On WhatsApp. You know how India uses it, right? Yeah? Symbols can go this way or that way, unless you know your culture. Yeah? Personas, very, very important. Even in like the most basic product, there's a personality embedded into it for it to be sharp enough. Yeah? Rituals that feel baked in. Yeah, like there is a clear ritual in the recipe that I've given to you guys, which I'll talk to you about. And values that feel very rooted, relevant, and resonant with the people who you're making the product for. And the example for this really is the recipe that I started off with. Uh, it's not really my mother's recipe. It's a kosambari. She did something to it, yeah, in order to get like a healthy something into her kid and make it fun. And then she gave it to me, and I did something to it because my husband's a gourmand, and he's not going to eat like a simple salad. I need to fancify it for him. So I put in some genda petals to make it look like fine dining, and it actually added to the smell because genda has a fairly distinctive smell, and if you pluck the insides and add it to the salad, it's edible. People eat it, genda, and it actually adds to the flavor. And the reason that I wanted to give it out to you guys is to make the point that it's for you to own now. And that's really the notion of the ideas that we create. It's really about what you do with that recipe. And that was my mother's whole point in giving it to me. Not to do exactly what she told me to do, but to do with as I will and hopefully improve it. Yeah? So in sum, broadly, design thinking is about defining who, when, where, what matters, and why to solving your brief, and taking it right through to designing how to apply insider intelligence to solving it nimbly and creatively. Thank you very much. That's my favorite quote. Questions? It's from some psychology journal. I thought it was rather true. I'm open for questions if you'd like to ask me anything. Have I bored you all terribly? Absolutely. Absolutely. Very technical. Mm, mm. You use design thinking all the time, I'm sure. Yeah. Yes. Absolutely. Well, design thinking is just a problem solution approach. It can be applied to a problem or a opportunity, whether it's this size or this size. Yeah. An even simpler way of understanding design thinking is common sense. Yeah, literally, that's what it is. It's common sense. I'm, don't let anyone tell you that it can't be applied to one problem or the other. The biggest space that is being discussed on design thinking is applying design thinking to business innovation right now. They're not saying only for big size business. It can be used to solve any problem whatsoever, as long as you're methodical and conscious about doing each one of those things. Yes. Only for a complex problem. Yes, that's an interesting question. So the reason it came into our industry is to solve procedural problems. So IDEO, for example, was the biggest proponent of design thinking, and they solve problems for the WHO, for the UN. They're solving water crisis in India, some health crisis in Africa. So the notion that it is used to solve big problems is there, because that's how it has come into our industry. And in the corporate world, it will always be applied because it is a new buzzword, a new discipline. It will be applied to that one brief. You know, that one brief of the year in which you want to kind of indulge yourself. It's seen as a kind of luxury form of consulting. It's not. It's a very real thing that you can, please don't allow anyone to tell you that. You can apply it in a very, no.
It's 11 hours.
That is a good question. So, sorry, that was my laptop. That is a good question. Yes, design thinking is slightly different from creative thinking. And the only difference is that it applies strategy and creative thinking together. So it's not just like research and creative thinking, for example, or strategy and creative thinking, like in an advertising agency, there'll be a planner and a creative. Yeah, so design thinking applies both. It's grounded in a lot of deep research. When you're taking out each of these things, I'm simplifying it to say that we do it intuitively every day. But if you are to solve a problem behind which you're going to throw a lot of money, there is a reason to do it methodically and in a very rigorously researched fashion. That's about it. But it can be used to solve your everyday practical problems, and it can be used to solve rather big complex problems as well. Yeah, anytime, anytime. Any other questions? Yeah, sure. 100, yes. Yeah. You are so right. It's a big challenge. It's a challenge that we also face. One of the ways in which we deal with the challenge is to design the research very interestingly and in ways that the client wants to go on it. Foraging expeditions are a great way to get clients to go on some of these research engagements. There's no shortcut to it. You have to explain. And you have to make them buy into the value of attending it. And as a design thinking process, it's not quite just, it's not a siloed process. You see, design thinking, when you're researching, you're solving. So there's a lot of value in the client being there because you're solving right there. It's not like the client has briefed you, you'll go away for 1 month, do research, come back, and then appear again, and then we'll think about ideation. You know, that's how a pipeline works. Design thinking is not like that. You're solving and researching and prototyping and creating all of that I told you. It's not a step-by-step thing. It's a lot of it is stuff you're doing at the same time. So you have to explain the value. You have to, there's no shortcut to it. But yes, you have to emphasize the value of their being there because you're solving as you are finding out. Sometimes that helps to make that point. But I can't deny the importance of them being there is very, very high. One of the great ways in which it goes wrong is if you go away, go through a design thinking process, solve things, come back, and the client's like, I don't care for this. They have to be a part of it. It's their product. It's their solution. Yeah. Thank you all.
Thank you, Vidya. So we'd like to, Vidya, if I can have you on stage, she'll handle. So that was a really insightful session. Um, this is just a small memento from our end. Thanks. And so when my son is really happy, he does this wiggle. So can I see a wiggle if we are happy today? It can also mean he needs to pee though, but that is my sign that everything is happening and everything's good. So thank you for the wiggle. And we have next Neeti Jain from Queen, who is the moderator for our next session. Neeti, if we can have you on stage. She's the co-founder of Queen, which is a platform to educate and connect women with mentors, business partners, and opportunities to work from home. We also have Minita Saxena and Muni Trivedi. Minita is the head of content product services at TCS, and Muni Trivedi is the founder at Magenta. Thank you, ladies, for joining us today. So, content marketing and what you need to know.
Thank you. We're very close now. Keep it close. Good morning, everybody. Thank you, Vidya. That was a very insightful session. Some were very complicated technical words for us, I'm sure, at least for me. But it was great to listen about design thinking. I don't think I have that knowledge yet, and most of us probably heard something of that sort, probably for the first time. But some of the topics that you talked about is in the marketing content that we're going to talk about today with Minita and Muni as well. So to give you a little introduction, I'll start with Muni and Minita and then later myself, maybe. I don't like self-introductions. Yeah. So Muni has had a successful career in publishing and event management in the UK. She moved in 2009 to start her entrepreneurial journey. She co-founded Magenta and Indigo Pre-Media in January of 2017 this year. Both these companies are into communication planning, content development, and design services. She has her degree in the same field in marketing and management, business development. I mean, there's a lot to say about you, Muni, but I'll keep it short and sweet. And I know she's also into cooking on weekends and exotic cocktails. That's what I found interesting on your profile. So maybe she can give us some tips today on that as well. Or maybe we can get Vidya's mom and husband to give us some of that. And then we have Minita here, who's had her career as an advertising professional, and then she's evolved into a strategic brand consultant. And recently, in her new role in TCS Ion, she's into content quality check, quality control. So she develops confidential content for digital assessments there. She's obviously IIM Bangalore in marketing and advertising. So that's an introduction, a brief introduction about everything that they do. A little about me. Like Anju said, I head Queen, which is Quirky Women Empowerment and Experiences Network. We provide women with work from home opportunities as well as a platform for them to upskill and learn about new business ventures that they can start on their own. We do a lot of trainings and workshops as well. Um, I also head India operations for a UK-based company called MDA Training, which is into corporate financial domain level trainings. Uh, and I have done my uh, what executive program from Harvard Business School and a master's from Syracuse University, and an engineer. So I don't think that matters anymore. But yeah, that's about me. And I worked in the corporate for about 10 years. I was heading the information risk department for JP Morgan Chase. So cutting all that short, going to what really matters to you is how do you use content management for your businesses or your ventures, and what are some of the tips that Muni and Minita can provide to you, and also how do you, in this fast paced growing environment, how do you learn, how do you move from a DIY to an outsourcing? At what point in your business should you outsource your content development uh, to professionals like Magenta or other companies? So that's my probably first question to you, Muni, is if I'm a startup or a smaller industry, when do you think should we look at outsourcing our content development or strategy development as well?
So the first thing I would say is that startups are not always poor. You know, a lot of startups have investment behind them. So one of our new strategies with our new business is to actually go after startups because they have backing, you know, and they have great ideas, but they don't necessarily know how to put those ideas out. They've got a great cookery idea or a great wellness idea or whatever the idea is, but they need help backing that up, and they've also got financial help. So I would say that there's that sort of startup that's got financial backing. There's also the other type of startup that is someone that's working from their spare bedroom and is working really hard, probably 24 hours a day, ignoring their children and getting this business off the ground. And we're all women here, so we're juggling lots of priorities, and you've got lots of conflicting pulls on your time. So I would say that at the beginning, it's your idea, and if you're in the latter category, you won't necessarily have the budget. You'll have a very tiny budget, and you've got to be so careful how you manage that. Indian banking systems are not always very favorable to young businesses. They don't necessarily give you loans. You have to prove you don't need it before they give it to you. So, you do have to manage that carefully. I think there's lots of channels out there. We know all of the standard channels. You've got, depending on what your product is, how you want to get your message out there. You've got LinkedIn, you've got Facebook, you've got Instagram, you've got all of these different, and lots more. There's new ones coming out every day. And you work out, if you're going to do it yourself, work out how you can manage it, diarize it in as a client. Yeah. So if you can spend an hour a day on your, because you've got a great idea and there's no point if nobody else knows about it. Yeah. So you've got to see it as an investment in yourself and diarize it in like a client. And that way you're actually not spending any physical money. It's your resource, your time, which obviously has a cost, but you'll get great payback. Then as you see that return, as you grow, you then, I don't know, in every business growth path will be different. When you're at a certain level and you'll know you're feeling stretched and you're not able to do the thing that you're really good at. If you're a wedding video producer or whatever you're doing, and you can't actually do the ideation for your, this lady who's, it's the biggest day of her life and she wants that great wedding video, and you're too busy doing your accountancy and your social media strategy. I think that's the point when you think, I've grown, acknowledge it. And that's a great point to be in your business. So acknowledge that you're at that point and give it to someone else. Bring someone else on board who's then going to do that as a priority. And then you will be able to prioritize the value you can give to your clients, and then your business will grow further. But that will be a different point for each of you where you are. So I hope that helps.
Yep, that helps. The other thing that you also mentioned is quality versus quantity. So I mean, with all the new platforms that we have now, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Pinterest, LinkedIn, it's really difficult to sometimes analyze which is the right platform for you to be in. Should we be in all the platforms? Should it be a selective platform? How do you decide that? And then also, if you decide on a platform, like for example, if you decide Facebook, what do you think is a good quantity? I mean, do we do 20 posts a day, just keep spamming, or just, even if you're doing email campaigns, do we do one email a day or one email a week? How do we come up with that kind of a strategy?
So I would say, again, it comes down to your resources. If you've got some good, at the end, we all know this phrase, content is king. If you've got a good story to tell, and you could be actually telling someone else's story. It's really nice if you see, I love it when I see a good piece of work. I see a lot of, I see a lot of creative work. I see a lot of different kinds of, writing. And I absolutely love it when I see something that's been really well thought out and really well written. And I'm very happy to share that. Someone's got a really good idea and they've managed to articulate it well. So I feel that if you've got a really good thing, then share it. And I think if you've got good content, put it out there. Again, diarize it in to think, and you keep it in a folder so that you've got stuff you're building up a little pipeline of content. Sweat your asset. So if you've got one piece, so Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, they're all very different platforms and you use them differently. So, and the way people interact with those platforms is very different. So for instance, Facebook, people will probably go down and down and down and down to a second page, to see who's posted what, who's got that. LinkedIn, they probably won't. You're lucky if you get down to the bottom because people just don't have the time. But if you've got a really good catchy phrase that will catch their interest, get them into your article. Quantity versus, so this is where that comes in. People don't have the time to read 3,000 words. You might think, this is really great. This is really, keep it brief. You can actually say, it takes longer to write 400 words than it does to write 2,000 words. When we take on new writers, that's the test we give. Can you write this in 150 words? And if you can, then you can get the nub in there. And that's when people will start engaging because it's like, oh, I know I can get this very quickly. Yeah, it's like eating a cupcake rather than a whole birthday cake. Yeah, you still get the pleasure from it and you won't put on the kilos. So it's that, it's get it in, make it short and sweet. And then you can reprocess that into a Facebook post, change the wording slightly, keep it in your own brand voice, but make that content. So you're not actually telling anything different. You're using that same idea, you're telling it differently. If you've got a great wedding event that you've been putting out there, then, your LinkedIn story could be the whole strategy of how you created that thing. Your Facebook story is a little love, sort of isn't this beautiful pictures, aren't they gorgeous together? And your Instagram is, here's a picture. This is a great output. So you're sweating your asset.
Cool. Thank you, Bonnie. So, Minita, on the same topic, I had a question on how do you consider it to be a success with all the content you're putting up as to, is it just the sales conversion or a lead conversion? When you have all this content on the networks, how do you consider it that your content has been successfully taken by the audience?
To give you a background, first on where content marketing is concerned, I would say it's not just about prospects. Okay, it's also about your existing customers. How do I also retain them? So the whole gamut of just a new business as well as existing business, because after all, your existing customers are ones who will help you build your business. In terms of, say, if you look at what exactly I would evaluate, see, what we tend to do is see how many sales leads have we got, how many sales conversions have we got. Is that way most companies are concerned. But today, if you look at it, it's evolved to much more than that. Website traffic is very key. Website traffic is very key, and therefore, what we, at least we as a company, what we try to do is build around everything that we do, any activity which we do, whether it's on LinkedIn, whether it's on Twitter, or whether it's on Facebook, all ultimately that is bring that traffic to the website. So that's where we try to do that. What we also do in terms of that is we look at our customers also. We have a huge site. I'll give you an example of our product. What we deal in is small and medium. Okay, and our product is technical aimed at solving educational as well as manufacturing. Now, it's a complex. The user who uses the product, he is not the one who decides to buy the product. It should be left on the management. So our objective is to see that within the management, they also get influence and they also drive our product further. For us, besides the usual thing of Google Analytics, coming from where, have your 15 links to track where the traffic came from. One is that. Also try to see our entire thing recommendations from clients. How is that putting up my some of the besides that, look at say research. What did come? But if I say look at research and see what other areas that what is the quality of lead? But then how fast does that work? How fast the speed is, how long the time, how much time are you spending on that? That's an evaluation which we go through. Then what you have is brand awareness in terms of social media. How many people are using it? 5 to 4% of us. That's another format of evaluation. Also in brand. Now our target come up for us as a company to come to 1% of percent results of. And believe me, we have not had, while all of you are I might be working in a company, yes, but as a see, we are a so we had our own customer we had to do our own business ask the top brand. What we had done, we started at Fusion features. 250 odd features available. Only technical stuff. How do I make that friendly to a person like you or me? Understand that. But that's or for more in terms of value benefit. How does it make your work or your job more efficient, more effective? How is it cost saved? How does it is on that and those frequent traffic to our various customers understand how to do your business, coming that to others. Put that further, repurposing that to shorter Facebook and LinkedIn and then started monitoring what was happening on Facebook. Very easy to understand on those sites to get your update and the bulk of
Thank you, Bhumika. And then you use a lot of performance metrics as well, right, for your B2B. So Google Analytics,
Google Analytics,
Facebook Insights.
Facebook Insights, yeah. And LinkedIn also, we do track the number of mentions and post tickets and how many people are coming. So everything is tracked because we create our links that way, so we know where it's coming from.
And would you have any suggestion on when should a person create a new content, whether it should be a brand new content development or can we use reuse other
Yeah. So the,
previously
there's
used
a
content?
limit, yeah. But for instance, you need to get the maximum out of what you have. Okay, so if you have a product, okay, and you have research also on that product, see how much you can draw from that. Believe me, if you actually sit through research and the data which you have, you'll be able to draw lots of cuts and on analytics which you have, which you can use to promote your product. And you have to go up to a point. Beyond a point, you can't keep on touting the same. You can't repeat the same content. You can find ways of saying it differently. Okay, I mean that's one. It's not a task. Actually, if you put your mind to it and you really you look at what kind of benefits you want to. I'll give you some pointers on what we did in terms of questions we asked ourselves when we wanted to build content for our product. See, we asked four questions to ourselves. How does this capability which we have, how is it going to help the customer grow his business? Does it help him? How does it do it? Second questions we ask, how would it help that customer to serve his customers better?
Mm.
Then another one, how does it deliver efficiently to them in terms of, say, cost saving, in terms of reducing their risks, increasing their profits? How does it also help them to integrate the various processes? If you look at all these small businesses, the biggest constraint which they had was they operating separate function by itself. So how does this thing build them together? Does the feature help them to bring that together? So if you had a feature which answered these questions, or bulk of these questions had answers, we used to use that and then build that up into smaller.
Okay, thank you. So yours is more B2B. So
Mine is more
B2B.
Of late, we are
Yep.
going into the B2C segment.
B2C.
Because we've launched this digital hub, which is information pieces, targeting a different company, medical and banking, and even the academics for students to understand papers, prepare for exams as such. That point will become a B2C, which is a larger task, a more huge
More,
task.
yeah. Okay. So
But email works the best. Email is not dead. Okay, email marketing works the best even today.
most people think emails, nobody reads emails anymore.
The question is, how do you phrase your email? Okay, it's attractiveness. I mean, it's very easy. Okay, attractiveness, maybe the jargon which I'm using as a word. Okay, but how do you capture? Once upon a time, you used to have reams of content. It's a question of your first line, the subject matter of that thing, which is still this holds good even till today. How does that capture the person's attention? How does that one value come out? Thereafter, then after that, you use him to come to the main place where it is the website or the blog piece which you want to divert to come and read. That's where it is. But the email still today works, and email is very easy to track. And you can track number of people who have clicked on your open, how many people have bought. You can really account and make it accountable.
That's true. You can also track if they open any links from the emails that
Yes.
you had. So Muni, back to you. You says picture says 1,000 words. Can you help with some tools that we can use for free, maybe free downloadables?
Sorry.
Yeah.
So yeah, there are platforms out there. What do you call it? Not agents, but sources. Sorry, out there for free images. I would. There's an Australian one, Stocksy, which is very, very good. And do you remember the one we used? I'll come back to it. I have no. Free images. Free images. So these are no, they're because they're still. I mean, Shutterstock actually is quite cheap. You know, you spend $50 and you get 5 images that you can download. That's actually very expensive, though. You know, it's. Yeah, I found it's quite expensive though, you know, so when you compare, yeah, but there you get good, we then change our searches. If we need to find Indian images, we look at images, not images, but sorry, Shutterstock or ThinkStock, and we look for South American images, for instance, so you've got the skin tones and, you know, the features. So we change our searches. I'll come back to you because there are a couple of free images. It's still paid for. It's still paid for there. Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, you know, there's free, but the thing is, you get what you pay for. So if it's free, it'll be quite generic, in my you know, in my experience. But if you can spend a little bit of money and spend a bit of time with clever word searches, you'll get something that's much more appropriate. I mean, I've seen the same image used on a bus hoarding and, you know, on various you know, and it's like, oh, I know where he's got that from, you know, and it's, I then see the image and I'm not actually looking at the message, you know. So if you just spend a little, it's one of those things, it's worth getting one good image that you've paid, you know, $20 for or $50 for, rather than something very generic that you've pulled off the net, you know, and then you could get into copyright infringement and, you know, you don't want to get into any of that.
And one last question I had for you was, how do you build trust with your customers or your community that you're building? You know, how do you be authentic? And what are some other tips that you can give the audience?
So number of levels here. I think it's, you've got to engage with your audience, with your customer, with, you know, the people that are, you know, that really matter to your business that you're engaging with. So we had if I can just give one example of a great thing that happened to our business. So a colleague, actually Anusha there, was saying about there's this Oh Fudge. I don't know if you've seen it. It's a great product, really well designed. And I'm not a chocolate fan, but it was, so she was sort of raving about this. So we ordered it. She ordered sort of 6 different jars. And then she said, oh, and they sent it. And she said, oh, normally I get a little extra little taster thing, and they call it a bribe. So one of the other colleagues said, just put it on Instagram, saying, where's my bribe, right? They then, I think about half a day later, said, the bribe has left the door, which I heard, the bride has left the door. I was like, oh, she's doing a runner. Anyway, by the end of the day, this little package arrived, beautifully packaged, and there was much excitement in the office. And we opened it, and it was this gold box with little tiny mason jars of 5 or 6 sample jars. They'd rebranded, taken all of their branding off, put our branding on there. So it was magenta branding. And on the